Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ogden Air Logistics Complex Commander's Call. I'm Captain Kelsey Sumner, your narrator for this morning's event. At this time, please silence all electronic devices. Additionally, at the end of the event, please be sure to let us know how we did by using the tablets that will be posted at the exits. We'll begin momentarily. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the Commander, Ogden Air Logistics Complex, Brigadier General Collie von Hoffman. Please be seated. We'll begin by recognizing several outstanding Ogden Air Logistics Complex team members who have been honored as fourth quarter award recipients. Please come forward when your name is called. Also, please hold your applause until after the photos are taken. In the civilian category 1, Mr. Paul Watkins from CMXG is a constraint buster. He helped synchronize backshop flow, resolved kitting issues, and increased the F-16 jet fuel starter throughput by 25%. In the civilian category 2, Mr. Andrew Chisholm from MMXG has swiftly troubleshot two inoperative, yes ma'am?
I got Wendell.
He's unable to attend this morning.
Okay.
Mr. Chisholm has swiftly troubleshot two inoperative launch control center blast valves and sustained system serviceability, saving $170,000 in replacement costs. In the civilian category 3, Mr. Wendell Hansen Jr. from AMXG led off-equipment low observable efforts on 3 machine prototype aircraft and identified multiple scripting faults vital to new network efficiency. He was unable to join us today. In the company grade officer category, Captain Phil Carrigier from CMXG oversaw a critical 4-year work stoppage, coordinated with engineering to correct technical orders, and directed new tooling procedures to clear 6 MICAPs. In the senior non-commissioned officer category, Master Sergeant Kevin Butt from AMXG directed a 10-member Pacific Air Forces depot field team, replacing an F-16 bulkhead to return a 229-day grounded aircraft in support of the Republic of Korea defense. In the non-commissioned officer category and unable to be here today, Staff Sergeant Christopher O'Copney from the AMXG drove a $1 million bulkhead replacement depot field team. He drilled and installed 5 structural components and added 20 aircraft availability days to the 51st Fighter Wing Flying Hour program. In the volunteer category, Mr. Richard Larkin from AMXG planned and executed dinner for 50 people, collecting clothing and toiletries for Lighthouse Homeless Shelter and Safe Harbor, volunteered at the Safe Harbor Evergreen Charity Dinner, which raised $160,000, and through other efforts, raised $540 to offset overdue school lunch balances. The team award is presented to the Minot Depot Support Team from MMXG, with Captain Van Aartsdalen accepting on their behalf. The team is the first geographically separated unit in the group to fully embrace the electronic functional equipment and management system, uploading over 5,000 tools to the system in order to eliminate long-standing Inspector General discrepancies. We will now recognize several outstanding team members who have been honored as 2019 annual award recipients. Beginning with the civilian category 1, Mr. Zachary Vanderwall from MMXG supported and provided a high-fidelity intercontinental ballistic missile test environment. He enabled 38 critical nuclear tests and provided 100% on-time results. In the civilian category 2, and unable to be here today, Mr. Andrew Chisholm from MMXG overhauled 7 launch facilities and launch control centers. He replaced components with $2.8 million in refurbished parts and prepared Air Force Global Strike Command to a 99% mission capable rate. In the civilian category 3, Mr. Lance Sherritt from EMXG is an effective leader who minimized downtime and achieved 75 TDYs during fiscal year 2019. He increased workload by 25% and logged 50,000 direct product earned hours. In the field grade officer category, Major Matthew Hall from MMXG directed daily operations and reinforced the nuclear enterprise with 108% efficiency, with less than 150 personnel, 15 shops, a $24 million budget, $25 million in equipment, and $4 million in nuclear certified equipment. In the company grade officer category, Captain Ryan Van Artstalen from MMXG bolstered Air Force-wide innovation by orchestrating the first ever logistics think tank, adopted by half A4. In the senior non-commissioned officer category and unable to be here today, Master Sergeant Christian Johnson of EMXG oversaw repair and alignment of vital Pacific Air Force F-15 and F-16 components and returned 21 assets to service, propelling a $352 million flying hour program. In the non-commissioned officer category, Tech Sergeant Wesley Harville from AMXG integrated with the F-16 depot repair line and trained 4 technicians on the bulkhead repair process, increasing flight qualifications by 20%. In the airman category and unable to be here today, Senior Airman Zachary Hugan from the MMXG authored a training plan for a new contract, uploaded and verified 135 maintenance tasks, and facilitated the first ever $42 million missile handling unit depot maintenance. In the volunteer category, Mr. Christopher McWilliams from AMXG organized the Thanksgiving meal, providing a hot meal and shuttle service to and from a shelter for over 90 homeless veterans. In addition, he assisted with designing Bountiful Vets Park and set statues with QR codes in the common area to pay respect for our nation's heroes. Last but not least, the team award is presented to the Expeditionary Depot Maintenance Flight, with Senior Master Sergeant Christopher Buderbaugh and Sergeant William Klein accepting the award on behalf of the team. Team members here today include Sergeant Ken Oline, my apologies, Sergeant Benjamin Tamman, Sergeant Tiffany Hughes, Sergeant Andrew Roberts, Sergeant Brandon McClellan, Sergeant Jared Howard, Sergeant Ryan Gray, Sergeant Joseph Kern, Sergeant Ronnie Ramos, Sergeant Wesley Harville, and Sergeant John Gober. The team is the Air Force's busiest expeditionary depot maintenance flight, with over 57 personnel spending 7,000 days annually around the world conducting aircraft repairs. The team helped restore 31 training and 65 combat aircraft to support combatant commanders and the Flying Hour program. Thank you to our award recipients for your dedication and outstanding service. Let's give them a final round of applause. And now, ladies and gentlemen, General von Hoffman.
Thanks, Kelsey. Thanks for reading those as quickly as you did and getting through them. Listen, the rest of the commander's call does not get better than that. It's super, super. I'm so proud and so honored to serve with these award winners. Our commander's call, the QR code is up here. You can use this at any point during the commander's call. We've checked it even from the back of the theater. Your phone, if you want to use it, you should be able to read it. And it'll link you up really quick to a site that allows you to submit a question, or you can tag a question that's already been submitted that you like. We have released it on Monday afternoon at about 12:30. And since then, we've got about 800 responses. So it's working. and we'll address some of the questions that have come up later in the program. We'll address ones that have risen to the top. So we have one particular question that so far has about 300 responses, but then also we'll take a couple if we have time from the crowd as well. So before we get much further, I just want to let you all into my world this morning. I'm staring at two 10,000 lumen something crazy lights. I've got two mics. Julie Lair told me I got static in my hair that the camera's going to pick up. We're live streaming for the first time ever. So you all get to experience this with me. It's a test run. We're hoping it works out okay. But just like they said, let us know how we're doing. When you leave in the back, we'll have some just kind of quick little yes, no, happy face, smiley face, frowny face kind of things. So let's get going. Next slide. Okay, the agenda is for this commander's call is really built around what we heard from you in the AFMC We Need interviews, IG interviews, and particularly the DOC survey. So a lot of the things that we'll cover today address comments that come out of that and the data that came out of that survey. But what I wanted to start with first, with the next slide, is kind of what we look like going into the next couple of years. There's a lot of discussion right now about Air Force budgets and what that does for our complex. So I'll just kind of give you a quick interview. We're going to stay after the end of the commander's call for anybody if you want a little more detailed answers on some of the things that I go through. But first of all, just to give you an overview, the total workload for the complex should stay around 8 million hours, which is that's normal for us. That was what it looked like in 19, and it looks like what will carry through FY22. But that 8 million hours will flux. So it's $8 million, but what makes up that workload will change a little bit. We'll see growth in F-35, F-16, C-130, and software. This, by no means, by the way, is a complete representation of what goes up and what goes down and what stays steady. It's just an example. So like I said, we can elaborate some more at the end if you want. What it looks like is going to stay steady is A-10 Minuteman and the Minuteman III PDM work. What we will see for sure is a decrease in exchangeables, and that is driven by the Air Force supply budget. We had a great comment, a great question after the commander's call this morning. I had some folks approach me and say, could we get a little more detail on that in EMXG and CMXG? And we're going to do that for you. Because whether or not we can change those things with that workload, what's within our control and what's not is kind of immaterial. We can at least give you the discussion of what's driving it from the Air Force perspective, and we'd like to give you some more information on that. So we're going to work with Mr. Payton and Ms. Stouter to make sure that information gets out there. But for the foreseeable, through FY22, we are not certain, but we expect the exchangeable workload to decrease, driven by what the supply system budget allows to drive into our complex. So what does that mean? It means a couple of things. We're still going to be busy. We still have a lot of workload. And the other thing it means, as far as hiring that's going on, it means it's just kind of common sense. Where we're growing, we'll continue to hire as we need to. Where we're stay steady, it'll stay flatline. Where our workload is decreasing, we will keep the employees, no additional hiring, but it may mean that some of the workforce is asked to go to where the growth is based on skill sets, based on what they can volunteer to do. Okay? And then long-term strategic posture facilitated by business development and marketing teams. That just means what we're going after is, particularly on the exchangeable side, where we can go get workload that we don't have now to fill those gaps, we're going after it. Okay? Next slide. All right, we're going to talk about the climate survey that we all took. Next slide. So it ran from the mid-November through 6 December. We had about 27% participation. That's not great, but it is historical average, so there is enough data out there for us to be able to take some actions off of what came forward. 15 out of the 16 climate factors improved. That's a good story. We had super favorable results in job satisfaction type questions, pride in organizational performance, a strong women culture, and a strong sexual assault prevention response intervention questions. Next slide. What we did here, just like every organization across the Air Force, inside a base, organizations outside of the Air Force, communication is always the area that we can do better. It's something that supervisors from the first level all the way up struggle with trying to get the word out. We're continuing to do that. A commander's call is part of that. But one of the things that we're putting an extra effort is making sure supervision at all levels is out walking about to understand what's going on and try to be able to hear better what the workforce needs. Some brown bag lunches, that's just basically on your own time if you want to give up some lunch time. We're putting senior leaders out and about so people can come and talk to them during lunch and just have general Q&A, whether it's workload or where the complex is going, or just general leadership discussions. That's what those brown bag lunches are aimed at. More social media presence. Our DVT office works really hard, and what we have right now, we're going to continue to press that. This live streaming is going to be out on YouTube, both live streaming right now, but then we'll have a finished product later. There may be other type events that we do the same thing just so that people can at their pace or at their time, be able to look at that. Engagement with your team councils, really putting a push behind the groups, being able to get information through that team council. We want to support those as much as we can. And then we mentioned the live streaming commanders calls. It says calls. If this one works and it's great, we're going to continue to do that, but we're looking for your feedback. Next slide. Okay. We want more inclusion. Several comments. This is kind of a rolled up category, but comments of, I don't feel like I'm part of my shop, my group, my whatever. And although the bullets don't address everything that we're getting after that, we're going to do some resiliency tactical pauses that focus on that particular subject. But we also want folks to be able to look and have some insight into what the senior leaders across the groups and in the complex see. So CMXG and the SWEG have stepped out and have some really cool shadowing programs that they're doing. And then again, another avenue we can get people's voices heard is through those team councils. Next slide. We hear this a lot, not just in the DEOC survey, but in the Workforce Innovation Forum, which is like a commander's hotline. We want more transparency in the hiring process. I will tell you, there is a very good hiring matrix. It's just a way to objectively score packages, resumes, experience, education. We have a matrix out there, and we have associated business rules for the hiring process. Those are very good. What we are still working on is the execution part of those processes, because you can set something up perfectly, but it's up to the individual panel members to be able to carry that through. Some of them are working great. Some of them we still need improvement on. And so we're continuing to train and provide resources for those hiring panels so that it is completely objective, and then we can show people completely transparent on how that hiring process is working. Until it's perfectly foolproof, we're going to continue to have the senior leader review and auditing. So we take a sample of every hire we have in this complex just to ensure we are adequately following that process. I'm willing to discuss that at any time because we continue to hear the feedback. There's too much friends and family hiring and not enough transparency, and we're very serious about addressing those concerns. Okay, next slide. All right, where we didn't do so well on the DOC survey, there's a couple of questions that assess the unit's knowledge of the sexual assault prevention and reporting knowledge. So we're going to walk through it real quick. I know you all have had the training. Just going to walk through these particular questions. In my editorial, my opinion only, I don't know how you all felt about it, but I didn't think the questions were super good. I thought they were a little confusing, thus the really low percentage. We had less than 50% of the people get these couple of questions correct. Part of it is how it was worded. The other part is we just need to continue to reinforce these particular things. Where I go offline, we do also have somebody from the SAPR office here. We have an expert with us if anybody has further questions, or she can keep me in line. In any case, what we're going to start with is a quick definition of what an unrestricted report. An unrestricted report basically does two things. It immediately provides the person making the report, the victim, services, support services. It also immediately starts an investigation for accountability. Two things. Anybody on this chart underneath, plus the chaplain, can take an unrestricted report of sexual assault. Okay, next slide. So give you a second to think, because there's some folks that can and can't take a restricted report on this slide. I will tell you, missing from this slide is the chaplain. So that should be a block on there also. Who can receive a restricted report? A restricted report is going to start one immediate action, and that's the victim's support services. It does not start an OSI or chain of command investigation for accountability. Okay, so if we can have the next slide, who can receive a restricted report of sexual assault? If it's green plus the chaplain, they can take a restricted report. Anyone in the chain of command, military, police, or a criminal investigator must start an investigation. Okay? Next slide. Okay, we're going to cover discipline. Ms. Angie Crott is here to cover some things. The reason why we've got this subject, because also in the DOC survey and other forms of feedback that we get comments like, I know this person abuses their leave, it's known by supervision, but there's nothing acted upon. Those type things, not just leave, covers all type of discipline actions. In essence, the question people are asking are we really holding employees accountable? Are we really holding supervisors accountable for their actions when they don't meet standard? The answer to that question is yes. We cannot ever give specifics for obvious reasons. We don't want to identify people in the disciplinary process. But what we can do is give you a roll-up of what happens in the complex to try to address the concerns people have.
Good morning. Next slide, please. This is a roll-up of FY19 actions, and it's stripped by cause. What was the discipline taken for? And as you can see, we do hold people accountable, both employees and management. And just a few of the high drivers are stuff that we always look at. We look for trends and see how we can help this process. And if you notice, both on employee actions and management actions, we have conduct unbecoming, discourteous conduct, and disregard of directive. And a lot of that just can be handled by treating each other with dignity and respect and just following the rules. There's an AFI 36703 that covers civilian conduct and responsibility, which actually calls out for us to live by the Air Force core values. If we do that, a lot of these things will go away. Another high driver that we find is leave. And this is another communication issue between management and their employees. If you know what's expected of you, it's really easy to comply with it. If you don't, that's where we kind of get messed up. So if you don't know, ask. And if you're a supervisor, make sure you are talking with your employees and let them know what's expected. We could also see that trend lower. Next slide, please. I'm here to talk a little bit about the Defense Performance Appraisal Program. If you already know what this is, bear with me while I just give it a little bit for our new employees. This is the way we rate our bargaining unit employees and our federal wage employees. The beginning of the year starts 1 April and it goes through the 31st of March. And right now we're in a key area, and this is the opportunity for employees to give feedback to their supervisors. Although we should be giving feedback all year long, there's times when a manager is busy and forgets all those great things that you do throughout the year. So this is your opportunity. And I realize that My Biz is not always the easiest tool to use, always the recommended, but even if you just write it down on a piece of paper, send an email to your supervisor, give your input so that they have that and they can rate you appropriately. In this process, there's 3 touch times. First is when you get your performance plan, and that's hustle time for feedback. And then the mid-year feedback, and then the end-of-year cycle, and that's what we're at. These will be communicated to the employees in May, and in June is when they'll become effective. Does anybody have any questions for me? Ma'am, back over to you. Next slide.
Okay, great. So unless you've been living underneath a rock or don't listen to the radio or watch TV, you know what year it is and that we're going through the election process. So we're going to talk about that real quick just to give everybody a refresher about the cans and can'ts, do's and don'ts. Next slide. What you should know about political activity as a DoD employee, whether you're military or civilian. You're encouraged to carry out your obligations of citizenship, and that means you vote. You research your candidates and vote. The DoD, however, as an organization and as individuals in status, should remain apolitical. And that activity is regulated by the Hatch Act. The U.S. Code reference is there if you want it. And that's what covers everything. Next slide. If you are a military person, you may vote. You may express a personal opinion on political candidates or issues. You can give money to a political campaign. You can attend events, not in uniform. You can follow, friend, or like a political candidate in social media, not follow them around. But those are all things you can do and highly encouraged. Next build, please. What we can't do. Can't solicit, accept, receive contributions, no fundraising for a partisan candidate, no sending forward, posting political messages from government equipment. What was actually kind of new to me, and realized this, was the personal devices while on duty. That kind of makes sense. But personal devices in a federal building, regardless of your duty status at the time, or regardless whether you're in uniform or not. So I thought that was something that was new to me. Posting links, sharing, retweeting, partisan comments, not allowed, and obviously anything that violates UCMJ or regulations, not allowed to do. I'm going to turn the civilian piece, next slide, over to Mr. Fox.
All right, good afternoon. So, as you saw, there are some definite restrictions for airmen in uniform. There are also the yeses and the nos for airmen in civilian clothes as well, for those of us in the civilian service. So, obviously the same message. We want to get out and vote. As citizens, we should and we encourage you to use that right and be involved in your country's government in that regard. You can organize political rallies and meetings, so that's different from our uniformed airmen. You can make phone calls on behalf of a candidate, but the difference here is that, there's not the uniform piece, but it does still apply that you wouldn't do that when you're in duty status or, from federal property or on federal equipment. As a civilian, we can serve as a party convention delegate. You can work in political parties to get out the vote and express personal views via social media platforms. But again, I would caution that that's not the federal platforms, because we do have Facebook pages and whatnot for the Air Force, for Hill Air Force Base, for Ogden Air Logistics Complex. So those, it would just be from your personal, and then when you're not on duty, not in the federal property. And again, you can follow friends and political parties and candidates. Next slide. The no's are very similar. You can't run for partisan political office as a member of the federal government. You cannot solicit, accept, or receive political contributions to you, and that's kind of going along with that first one. We can't run for office. We are not able to engage in political activities on duty, kind of like I alluded to before, when we're in a federal building or in any way representing yourself as, representing Hill Air Force Base or the Air Force or the federal government. So one thing I would bring to your attention is, when you use your devices or use a social media, there are tags with it that kind of have the location, geographic, those kinds of things. So that's why we're wanting to make sure you're aware of the prohibition to do that on federal property or with federal equipment. All right, I'm going to now introduce Mr. Dave Nelson, and we also have Mr. Hood from our VPP and Safety Office.
Good morning, I'm David Nelson. I'm the Occupational Safety and Health Manager for the complex, and I've been asked to do a roll-up analysis of our safety program in 2019. Next slide, please. In 2019, we had enjoyed a reduction of 18% of the reportable mishaps or injuries over 2018. The upper two quadrants represent a Pareto type analysis of the most frequent injury types that we had and what body part is injured the most out in the industrial complex. These are the same categories that we saw in 2018. Also in the lower right quadrant is the industrial job series where we see the most injuries occurring. So the leadership team, first of all, wants to thank you for exercising good risk management and to continue to do that. Please utilize whatever controls and PPE that have been provided to you to help protect you. And without a doubt, please engage your chain of command in identifying hazards and pointing out things that we can do better to protect you and our mission. One of the things that we can do is use the Air Force Form 457, which is the hazard reporting tool, and Mr. Hood will go over how to do that. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm William Hood. Will. I'm your complex VPP program manager. By a quick show of hands, how many of you are familiar with VPP? All right. We're getting better and better. Okay, so you know about VPP, you've heard about it, but let me just give you a few nuggets that you may not know that are pretty critical to the program and the success of our safety program. First and foremost, VPP at Hill has morphed into many things. VPP is promotion and education of our already existing Air Force Safety Management System. VPP is a recognition program. It was developed by OSHA to award companies that strive for excellence in safety and health. A lot of people did not know that. Okay? Simply put, VPP is an award. Not only is it an award, but it's a partnership. It's a partnership with our labor, our employees, it's a partnership with our management, and it's a partnership with OSHA. But more than a partnership, it's a commitment. It's a commitment that our leadership has chosen to take on. And with that program, they have offered to make us stellar. They have offered to make us excellent. They have offered to go above and beyond the minimum standard and just go to the compliance level, they're shooting for excellence. So they have voluntold us to continue that and look for continuous ways to improve safety and health. And just a notable fact about that, only 0.05% of the companies across the U.S. achieve OSHA VPP star status. And we have one here at Hill Air Force Base currently, which is EMXG. We've got a couple teed up behind those guys. So great work there. To get into our slides, though, to talk about the safety message, my apologies, a little bit of a shameless VPP plug, and just want to get that understanding out since it came out on the DOCS. Just want to talk a little bit more, as Dave mentioned, about risk management. Risk management is key to keeping you, your fellow airmen, and your family safe. So I ask that you be vigilant. Look at your surroundings, look at your situations, and take action. If you see it, own it. When I say own it, I don't mean just take a look at it, maybe wrap some tape around it and move on, but actually take action. Take action to document it, because as most of you know, if the paperwork isn't done, the job isn't done. And a way to document is in the Air Force Form 457. On the Air Force Form 57, it's on every desktop, on every computer across the OO-ALC. So you get on there, you click for the digital Air Force Form 457, submit the hazard, your safety team, your VPP team, your unit safety reps all have access to that. They can get in there, and then together, as a team, they can start working those hazards with your leadership. Most hazards get identified, and from submission to the time they're answered is anywhere from 1 hour up to 24 hours. The compliance level says they have up to 10 days. So you see the mindset there. We are striving for excellence. Thank you for that. While we're talking about reporting hazards, I think it's important to mention that it's your OSHA right to be able to report a hazard, a chemical, a process, whatever it may be in your work area. Report that hazard without fear of reprisal. But if you feel like in the past maybe it was a little uneasy or you don't want to put your name out there, there is an anonymous way to do hazard reporting. And that's in Air Force Form 457, and that's the hard copy. Or some of our folks have called the union, and then they've called VPP and safety, and then we get the right people on it as well. So just want to bring that out. But on a personal note, the end goal of our OO-ALC commander, our leaders from the top down, our safety VPP team, we just want to ensure that the plans, processes, and procedures are in place so that you go home as safe as when you came in. The work that you do here is critical. It's critical to the warfighter's mission. It's critical to the nation's security. We depend upon your operational readiness and quality maintenance practices. Hence our motto, built right, ready to fight. I will leave you with a quote from Mark Twain. It is better to be careful 100 times than to be killed once. Thank you for all you do.
All right, hello everyone and everybody who's live streaming with us right now. I'm Captain Olson, and I've been hanging out over here in the corner, keeping an eye on all the questions that have been coming in today. So, ma'am, at this point, over 400 responses have been related to gym time. So the first question
This does not surprise me.
is, I would like to know if gym time will be reinstated for civilians.
Great, okay. So the only thing that makes me feel better, the only person that gets this question more than I do is General Kirkland, and we're gonna keep pushing it at him. So the short answer is it will not be reinstated before August or September. The memo that General Kirkland put out for the entirety of the sustainment center, so all 3 complexes, the 2 supply wings, and the 3 air base wings are all sharing this, said that it's suspended for 12 months because that's the amount of time he is allowed to suspend it. He will reevaluate it again this summer about whether it continues, and he'll look at all the data because it's a data-driven decision. It's a lot about how much production are we doing, how cost effective are we, and so he looks at all of that, and then we'll make that call again this summer. So no gym time for the rest of up until August-September timeframe. He'll make another assessment now. But what we do have from our QR code linked question is we have 400 something data points. Okay, and when we talk about data-driven decisions, this is actually part of it. So I appreciate everybody's feedback on that. Keep the questions coming, keep the dialogue up about that. I know we talk about the health of our weapon system. The most important weapon system we have is the individual military and civilian airmen, and that fitness time is important to you, and I know that, and I know it's part of your keeping your weapon system healthy. We'll continue to evaluate it and give him the data, and we got a lot of it the last couple days.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question I have for you, is there an avenue for production workers to make a complaint or observation to senior leadership when their work leads or supervisor or hires direct them to perform maintenance when they do not have all the required tech data and or equipment as required? Perhaps a commander's hotline program?
Great. Okay, so I really wanted this question again. It came up earlier this morning, and we talked to it then. First of all, yes, there is a commander's hotline. It's called the Workforce Innovation Forum, completely anonymous. You submit your observation, your question, and it's seen all the way up through to me. We give it to whoever needs to take action on it, and then we reply back to the person that submitted it. That's part of it. That is an anonymous way to get your information up. It's not the perfect way. Here's what we want to get to. We want to get to a culture of do it right. And do it right means from the leadership that the employee has the right training, the right equipment, the right tools, the right tech data, all of those things to be able to perform their job that they are comfortable with. That is our goal. And our culture is not get it done now, but get it done right. So that's what we're going to get to. And I'm going to ask, Colonel Ackerman was here this morning. I totally put him on the spot. But I'm going to ask him to talk to this a little bit because he has some recent experience that might be of interest to you all.
Thank you, ma'am. So I just wanted to level set. I'm the Aircraft Maintenance Group Commander. So 6 February, we did something we haven't done in 30 years, over 30 years. We shut down the F-16 production line. A lot of people have asked questions. I know it's across all my 7 squadrons, probably across the entire complex. I know I was also getting questions across AFSC of what's going on. So first thing is, there's no quality escape on F-16s that came off the production line. Why did we shut it down? Over the last 6 months, we created over $3 million in damage or production loss due to misdrills, structures, you name it, across the entire production effort. So received a phone call from Braden Stander, the new squadron director. There's something going on. I don't feel comfortable. We made a decision to shut it down, had backing from General von Hoffman all the way up through General Kirkland as well as General Bunch at AFMC. But why did we do it? Well, besides the structure and the production loss, we decided to essentially impound the F-16 squadron. And we wanted to get all the way down to the lowest level of what's going on in the production level. And this ties back to the question, I don't have the stuff that I need in order to do the job. So from the wage grades to the first lines to the second lines, we were told we don't have the training that we need in order to lead on the production line. TAA, PDMSS, you name it. So we stood up a 6-module leadership course that we did following the shutdown. Then we sat down with every single individual in the F-16 squadron and asked them, what is going on? Do you have the people? Do you have the resources? And do you have the processes in order to do your job? Some of the things that were told to us as senior leaders, it was, I have addressed it to my leadership, and I've been told, just go do the job. I've asked for tools, but I've been told to go to do the job. We don't have the right HUC gun. We don't have the right stuff in order. We don't have the right process orders. We don't have the things to tell us to do the job, but we continue to produce. Well, my personal feeling in AMXG, and I would tell you the senior leadership is sitting here in the front row, all the way up to General von Hoffman and General Kirkland. General Kirkland has always pushed, do it the right way, using AOP. People, resources, and processes need to be in balance. We all have a common goal. And if you're out of whack and you don't have what you need to do the job, shut the job down. The folks that I talk to on the production line, I would rather lose a day, I'd rather lose a week on an aircraft production and do it the right way than to have something go wrong and then we have an aircraft that's sitting down for an entire year. Why do I bring that up? Because 6 months ago, we had a misdrill and a structures problem across all 6 aircraft squadrons. And that's what stood up the misdrill IPT. And if you've heard of it, I would ask you to learn about it. We're standing up an innovation lab, but the bottom line is it came from an individual standing up and saying, I don't have the tools to do my job, and I'm asking my entire group, if you don't have the stuff to do the job, shut the job down. And oddly enough, ma'am, in the morning meeting this morning, Mr. Standard, he stood up, he said, I just want to let you know that we have our maintainers on the Pizzer line has actually shut down one of the production because they didn't have the right tech orders to tell them how to do the job, and they didn't want to do it wrong. And we're making progress. But the message, we can't change the culture, and the culture does need to change. And it needs to be one, do it right, and don't be forced to do it wrong. Thank you, ma'am, for your time.
We'll push out, I don't know what the number of questions is risen to right now, but just a reminder, we will push out answers to all the questions, and then we'll push out links as well for the, whether it's the individual group commanders, what they have available to you, or the one that rolls up to the complex.
All right, ma'am. Your next question is our second most popular question, and it is, are we getting a locality pay adjustment? The current pay does not reflect the actual cost of living for most base employees.
Correct. It doesn't. Okay, so the short answer is yes. Our partners, the 75th Air Base Wing, has taken this on by the horns, and it's really exciting. Not only are they looking at it for Hill Air Force Base, they're asking other federal government agencies within our area to join them, because it all rolls up to Office of Personnel Management, which handles all government employees. They have asked the FBI, they've asked the IRS to join them, to demand that another study come back in and look at all the factors that go into locality pay, and not just for Hill Air Force and its the communities that immediately touch it, but communities all the way from south of Salt Lake all the way to nearly the Idaho border. When we do that, we know the data is out there. Everybody's experienced rising housing prices, other things that have happened fairly recently to make our locality pay significantly lower than communities in our same position around the U.S. So 75th Air Base Wing is leading it for us. They're pulling together a package, but they're asking other government agencies to give it more firepower to join in. Obviously, they are receptive to that, so we're looking for some real progress there. I can tell you those are things that don't happen overnight, but there's a whole lot of horsepower behind that, so I'm really, really confident that that's something that's going to be going to have favorable results.
All right. The next question, ma'am. The gates have been good as of late. Will all the lanes continue to have multiple guards on duty during peak hours? There is then an example of some bad driving, which I cannot say over the mic to you, but they think that it will help with that issue.
We may throw that question in that comes out there, like the full question is hilarious. He said, or she, sorry, they said something to the effect of the crazies that do the U-turn on 193 to get in, the U-turn in front of oncoming 60-mile-an-hour traffic. So short answer is the 75th Air Base Wing runs that program. They do a super job. When they have all the extra folks on the gates, that is people that they have tapped from other organizations on the base to come out and do that. Those other organizations allow that augmentation at their own expense. So those folks are not on duty, or their duty days, instead of starting at 6:30, starts at 4 or 4:30 or 5. So that is all augmentation. Volunteer from the other units on the base to help augment that, and they will continue to do that as long as they can. So the question was actually, will it continue? Will continue to have good gate support in essence, and that is as long as they can support it from a mission standpoint. So when a big group of folks leaves this base, a big group of folks from the 75th deploys, we may see some fewer folks at the gate. Right now, it's been pretty good, but it's all mission dependent. They are very aware, however, that it's not just an annoyance to have to wait to come on base. 75th Air Base Wing Commander, I think most of you know, is a former AMXG commander in our complex. He is very aware at the cost, not just the annoyance, but the cost to production of that long lead time coming on base. What else?
All right, ma'am. We only have time for one more question, so I'm going to end with a fun one. But before I get to that, I just want to remind everyone that, like General von Hoffman said, we will be sending out answers to the questions. And also, this link, if you think of a question later, is open all day long. So if you have a question that comes to you later, feel free to submit it. And finally, our command team will be up front after the commander's call for anybody who has a question that they want to ask in person. So, ma'am, your final question. What is your favorite mission set in the complex and why?
That's such an unfair question. It's like trying to choose your children, which sometimes I can do. But my favorite mission set in the complex. I will say the best, we talked about the walkabouts a little bit earlier. The most fun, hands down, of my week is when I can get out and get in the shops, and I ask the squadron directors to just meet me and take me wherever you want to take me, show me what your folks are doing today. At that moment, that's the very favorite mission set of my complex, because a lot of times it's people I hadn't had a chance to get to meet yet, or it's a piece, something that we're working on that I had no idea up until that point how complicated it was, or how many people actually touch it. So at that moment, that's my favorite. And then I'll go somewhere next week and I'll go, God, I can't believe how cool this is. We get to do this too. So that's my answer. I will say, if I had to choose a child, however, I was a C-130 maintenance group commander before, and I know the ins and outs of that aircraft. I see you, buddy. So I do have an affection for that.
All right, thank you, ma'am. That is all the questions we have time for today, if you'd like to make any closing comments.
Okay, super. So love the questions. We really did try to hit the ones that people kind of tagged, hey, I want to know this too. But there is a long list and some really great questions. We are going to answer all of them, and we'll get those posted. Some of them will be faster than the others. Some of them are a little more complicated, but we'll get those to you. I really appreciate everybody's attendance. It's really important. The whole point of having a commander's call is to be able to communicate to you things that are going on around the complex. If I can do that better, please let me know. It's really, really important that I'm meeting your needs as far as communication is concerned. So thanks, everybody, for being here, and we'll be down front if you have any other questions. Thanks.